Let's talk about Bob Monkhouse. Older viewers and listeners will remember Bob, very talented, multivarious host of lots and lots of TV shows. Do you remember him? Golden Shot, he was the host of, wasn't he, for a long time. Anyway, Bob Monkhouse he was a great comedian, told great jokes. If you saw him, I saw him a couple of times, you know, after dinner shows. So if he was in adult company, his jokes were pretty damn near the knuckle. In fact, way beyond the knuckle. Hilarious, but not for child consumption, for adults only. But when he was on telly, you know, he's a professional. They were great jokes, pretty harmless. Anyway, in 1994, ITV used to do these big spectacular specials. They used to take a star and they used to call them An Audience With. So, you know, An Audience with Billy Connolly and An Audience with God knows who. Anyway, in 1994, they staged, with Bob Monkhouse, An Audience with Bob Monkhouse. As a mark of his popularity, if you want to know how many people tuned into that, wait for it, 20 million people. 20 million viewers tuned in to watch An Audience with Bob Monkhouse. So what they would do, he would be the star of the show and the audience would be full of celebrities laughing away at his jokes and his stories. They were quite good shows, actually, particularly if the star was funny like Bob Monkhouse. Anyway, you can still watch this on ITVX. I recommend it, by the way. However, be careful, because ITV have put a trigger warning on Bob's jokes. Bob, by the way, died in 2003 at the age of 75, sadly. And the trigger warning that ITV have put on his jokes in An Audience with Bob Monkhouse says, a warning over Bob Monkhouse's classic adult British humour, which they warn reflects the language and attitudes of its time. Oh yeah, all right then. Listen, let's talk to comedian Paul Cox. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
I'm all right. Now, you and I are going to risk causing profound offence to my...
Oh, I can't believe
to my audience.
I cannot believe there's anyone in your audience that's going to be offended.
Well, all right, I'm being ironic, but we're going to take a risk, though. You know, so
let's hope so.
If any of you people out there are sensitive, here's my trigger warning. We're going to tell some jokes by Bob Monkhouse, and if you feel offended by that, I don't care. Right, here we go. That's my trigger warning. So, I mean, first of all, Paul, before we run through some of his jokes, your thoughts on this, because these jokes, they are not of their time, they're actually timeless, and they're not offensive, they're a bit cheeky, they're not offensive. Why do we have to have a trigger warning on Bob Monkhouse? As I say, I saw him a few times live. He's a nice bloke, old Bob. At a dinner party, after dinner speaker, he commanded enormous fees because he was the past master at it. He was the best I've ever seen. Hilarious and absolutely filthy at a dinner event in public. On television, consummate professional, never crossed the line. Everybody loved him. Good old Uncle Bob. And now he's got a trigger warning on him. How ridiculous is that?
Well, it is ridiculous, and we don't have to. The question was, why do we have to? We don't have to have trigger warnings. I actually looked into this the other day for my own purposes. Trigger warnings came around as a result of very serious things, actually. People who went to war and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, or women that had been sexually assaulted, and there might be a scene in a movie or a documentary that might trigger that harrowing experience for them, and all that sort of stuff is okay. It makes sense, you know. Why not warn somebody? But when it's jokes by Bob Monkhouse, you might as well put trigger warnings on Peppa Pig, Kev, because it was so middle of the road, really. Very, very funny. He was an incredible jokesmith. If you don't remember Bob, or you weren't, you know, familiar with Bob at the time, he was an incredible jokesmith. When he passed away at the age of 75 in 2003, he had volumes and volumes and volumes of books of jokes that he'd written himself. In fact, just before he passed, they were stolen. They were returned, actually, after a much heartfelt plea from him.
He encyclopedically wrote down all his jokes, didn't he? Yeah.
So we absolutely don't need trigger warnings. I mean, ITV are
at all, if you ask me.
No, I don't think so. And by the way, if the things that we do need them for, like I mentioned before, in case anyone who wants to have the counter argument, that sort of stuff's going to be on late at night, after 10 o'clock, and, you know, you take your own risk at that time of day, and you should be an adult and you should be able to deal with it. When it comes to, you know, 8 o'clock in the evening and it's a repeat from 1994, which unbelievably is now 32 years ago. Yeah. 32 years ago.
I remember that show going out. Yeah, and I remember Bob as well. Listen, let's daringly show a clip from that very show, an audience with the late, great Bob Monkhouse back in 1994. Here we go.
They book the audience before they book the celebrity. They do everything backwards at LWT, or TWL as I like to call it, because they do everything the other way around here. They actually came up with the title, An Audience with Bob Monkhouse, and then they sat down and tried to figure out who to get for it. Very bewildering. Yeah.
We'll go through some of his jokes now. I'm not sure that these were all told in an audience with Bob Monkhouse. 20 million people watching, by the way. Look, some of these you might find sexist. They're old school wife and mother-in-law jokes, but in my view they're funny. This is the one I like. I'll probably get in trouble for it. Yeah, I got a horse for my wife. I thought it was a fair swap. He said, "I'll get some others." Right. My mother tried to. I should. Actually, if you're of a sensitive disposition, some of these you may find offensive.
If you're a horse.
My mother tried to kill me when I was a baby. She denied it. She said she thought the plastic bag would keep me fresh. I like this one. My point, actually, Paul, these are all jokes. These are of their time. No, they're not. You could tell these jokes now. I'd like to die like my old dad, peacefully in his sleep, not screaming like his passengers.
That joke, by the way, is an incredible joke, timeless joke, attributed to lots of different people over different times. Bob Monkhouse wrote that joke. And look,
not screaming like his
it's so brilliant.
It's brilliant. It is, isn't it?
You call them a pull back and reveal, you know. All of a sudden it becomes obvious, but it wasn't obvious until you reach that point. But look, all very funny. Look, the subject matter would change over time, but the structure of that joke is brilliant.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be offended by it. Who's offended by even the wife joke? We don't do them now. I mean, you said, and rightly so, that these jokes could be done now. And I run comedy clubs, and the audiences that attend my comedy clubs would all enjoy those jokes at some point or another. I have no doubt of that whatsoever. We probably wouldn't hear anything about wives or mother-in-laws anymore because...
Yeah, but why not? Why not?
Well, you might do, but there's been this drip feed, so people...
Yeah, you can't tell mother-in-law jokes about wives are sexist and all that.
It's not that it's not... Of course, you know... But we are ist in another way, right? There's always an ist. It just so happens that we've decided that talking about your wife or your mother-in-law in that way is we to be squeamish about it. And people aren't. They're just told that they should be, so that when they're in public, they behave as if they are to conform with the narrative view. It's like this kind of Fabian-esque, you know. Yeah. You know about the Fabians, the way that they just drip feed in things over years, and all of a sudden, before we know it, it's just accepted that you can't do these things.
Yeah, another. You see, this is the kind of joke. These are not offensive. These are clever jokes. When the inventor of the drawing board messed things up, what did he go back to? And
this is great.
I like this one as well. I can still enjoy sex at 74. I live at 75, so it's no distance. And of course, his most famous one that everybody remembers, I said it earlier in the show with Peter Cardwell. They all laughed when I said I was going to be a comedian. They're not laughing now. It's good stuff, isn't it? And you're right. He took it very seriously, and he meticulously wrote them all down. And the idea, you know, this guy, he hosted The Golden Shot, Celebrity Squares, Family Fortunes, Wipeout, great TV presenter, marvellous stand-up comedian. And I just think it's kind of sad now that these po-faced woke idiots put a trigger warning. Be careful, you might find that, you know, are these jokes of their time? My wife said, can my mother come down for the weekend? So I said, why? And she said, well, she's been up on the roof for 2 weeks already. You know, I mean, is that sexist?
Probably, but who cares? I mean, this is the point about comedy, really. You know, that some of those jokes, Bob, or the teller of the joke is the butt of the joke themselves. You can get away with that anywhere at any time, because if you are the butt of the joke, that's fine. As soon as you start bringing in other characters and they've got what we now call protected characteristics in some way, it becomes an issue. But unfortunately, laughing is involuntary. So as you tell those jokes, there will be people listening to this that perhaps have moved on with their views and don't like the whole, oh, mother-in-law, my wife's a fat woman type stuff.
Yeah.
But they are laughing anyway because the joke is written so well. The craft in there is amazing. There is no word that is unneeded.
Yeah, no, very brilliant. They are brilliant jokes. We've got another one here. Oh, yeah, this is quite fun. You see, there's nothing offensive about this, by the way. My audience always leave the theatre happy. We give them their money back. And there was that. Do you remember Jeremy Beadle?
Of course, yeah.
You know, what was his show? That thing about
Beadle's About was a
watch out, Beadle's About. Yeah. If you knew Jeremy Beadle, it was a very good name for that show. He wasn't perhaps the most popular man in showbiz. Wasn't he also in Game for a Laugh? Wasn't it? He was in that as well, wasn't he?
I mean, I never met him ever. But,
I did. He's not with us anymore. He was not a popular man, he was in the audience of an audience with Bob Monkhouse, and at a certain point in the show, all the celebrities got the opportunity to ask him questions, so they're firing questions at him. So Jeremy Beadle's question to Bob Monkhouse was, is there anyone here today, Bob, that you wish wasn't here? So Bob Monkhouse went, well, Jeremy, by a curious coincidence, and so on and so forth. But I just think it's sort of sad. I don't think that most of these jokes are not of their time. I think they're timeless. I mean, if we can't tell jokes about wives and mother-in-laws, what's the world come to? But these jokes mostly aren't about wives and mother-in-laws.
No, they're not.
So it's sad, isn't it? That
it is also, who's it for? Really, who's it for? I've never met anyone who's offended particularly by that sort of joking. Not really. People aren't offended by it. It might not be to their taste, and they might find it unfunny as a result. But the fact that nobody can then turn around and say, I don't believe anyway, you can't watch it because I don't like it. Because that's, you know, that's the underlying element. The undermining element of this is that it's people telling people A, what they should be offended by, and B, what they should find funny. And that's not how it works. It's all involuntary. It's all involuntary.
Yeah, I mean, one man's hilarious joke is another man's tremendously offensive joke.
I guess if you were ITV, you could argue, well, that's why we put the trigger warning on, because we're allowing people to watch it, but we don't want them to be offended. But really, it's ITVX. It's only old people like me and you, Kevin, that are watching it anyway. Yeah. No one else is watching it, and we're not
old people. You speak for yourself. I'm only 27. I've had a hard life, though. You know. But seriously, it's absolute nonsense that we have to put trigger warnings on this. My producer Dean was telling me earlier that because he's a saddo who sits around watching UK Gold and things like that, and he was watching endless reruns of Only Fools and Horses, which now have copious trigger warnings all over them. Be careful, you may find the show offensive. It is of its time. And do you know what I don't like about it? You know what I don't like about that form of wokery? It's this sort of supposition that we now are the most marvellous generation who ever lived. We're better than those Neanderthals in the past. You know, and that's not really true, is it?
no, demonstrably untrue by the fact that people keep going back and watching Only Fools and Horses, which I'm a huge favourite. I mean, Dean, I know Dean. He's a younger man than I am.
Not that much, I wouldn't say.
Well, he's a better looking man than I am, Kevin. I'll give him that.
Yeah,
but,
I'll go with that. Yeah. Although with you two, comparing you for looks, that's a bit like saying which disease would you prefer to die from, you know.
This programme should come with a trigger warning now. No, this is unfair.
You're right about that.
But it's demonstrably untrue. People keep going back and watching these programmes. That's why Dean does. It's all available. Everything's available to us, and we can choose to watch what's on now. But no one wants to watch sanitised comedy.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And by the way, on this offence score, I think we might have mentioned this the other day, but Ricky Gervais, who's no stranger to the odd risky joke himself, makes this brilliant point. I think it's one of the best points I've ever heard. Just because you're offended, it doesn't mean you're right.
Absolutely.
And that sort of sums it all up, really. It is this is what this is all about. This is the veneration of the offended, the deification of those who are offended. And we need to tell them, put up, shut up, no trigger warnings. If you're offended, hey, get used to it, learn to live with it. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. I mean, this is a tumultuous world right now, Kevin. You and I get to talk about politics as well as comedy. And the idea that a whole bunch of people that are offended by Bob Monkhouse could defend these aisles does worry me somewhat. It worries me not because they can't, it's because we might be asked to, because we wouldn't be so offended by the idea. And I don't want to go to war, my knees playing up and everything. I don't want any of that. But look, we just don't need it. Let adults be adults. I was tuning in before I was on air and you were talking about the nanny state. Yeah. And this is more nanny state.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it is. It's nannyism within the nanny state. Shall I, Ricky Gervais, I saw him the other day, he was asked, what's your favourite joke of all time? He said, oh yeah, I know what it is. I'll tell it. Why does Noddy wear a pointed hat with a bell on the top?
I don't know.
Because he's and I'm not going to finish that joke.
Do you know what? I thought you were going to.
You can fill in the words yourself. He's a weirdo, old Noddy, I'll tell you that. Really good to talk to you, Paul. Enjoyed you coming on the show for the last week. You are now officially a regular, so you better do something about that if I were you. Good to talk to you, though, mate. Thank you very much. That's comedian Paul Cox on the comedy of Bob Monkhouse.